The highest risk in digital transformation is confusing a software installation with a business implementation. Welcome to this executive briefing. We are delivering an unhurried, cold assessment of enterprise technology debt. Today, we deconstruct why billion-dollar organizations routinely cripple their own operations. They do this by purchasing vendor marketing instead of addressing real-world operational realities. We will examine the autopsy of failed deployments and the architecture required to rebuild.
Our roadmap is structured into 4 critical phases. First, an executive overview and the risk trap. Second, a detailed operational postmortem. Third, the human blueprint. And fourth, a chronological action plan and guardrails. Let us dismantle the illusion that enterprise resource planning is solely an IT challenge.
Section 1. The Executive Overview and the Risk Trap. The baseline metrics we face are grim, and they demand immediate executive attention. According to Gartner, 75% of ERP projects fail. McKinsey data compounds this reality, showing that more than 70% of all digital transformations fail to achieve their desired return on investment. These are not failures of code. They are failures of process. The ultimate risk trap is assuming that technology can cure operational dysfunction.
Section 2. The detailed operational postmortem. We are now entering a forensic analysis. We will examine 3 distinct case studies where global giants sought to revolutionize their operations, yet faced catastrophic financial fallout instead.
Consider the 1999 failure at Hershey Foods Corporation. The catalyst was the looming Y2K deadline. Driven by this external pressure, leadership compressed a highly recommended 48-month implementation cycle into an aggressive, unyielding 30-month timeline. They attempted a massive concurrent rollout, deploying SAP, Manugistics, and Siebel simultaneously across their infrastructure. To meet this arbitrary, accelerated deadline, critical testing phases were severely abbreviated. The system was forced into a live production environment in July. This timing immediately preceded the peak seasonal demand for Halloween and Christmas. The result was catastrophic. Hershey experienced $100 million in unprocessed orders. Distribution channels collapsed entirely. Inventory could not be managed or tracked. The company ultimately suffered a 19% drop in quarterly profits. This failure illustrates the absolute danger of prioritizing deployment speed over operational certainty.
Next, consider another staggering financial loss. In 2001, Nike spent $400 million on a new ERP and supply chain system partnered with i2 Technologies. The implementation was rushed. It suffered from severe demand planning bugs right from the start. The new software architecture was fundamentally incompatible with Nike's legacy systems, a misalignment that led to cascading data errors and frequent system crashes. Furthermore, Nike leadership failed to manage the necessary organizational change, which predictably resulted in widespread user resistance across the workforce. The financial fallout was a $500 million loss in revenue. They experienced severe supply chain disruptions, specifically crippling their highly profitable Air Jordan product lines. The situation escalated to multiple lawsuits over unfulfilled retail orders. Eventually, Nike was forced to spend another $500 million just to stabilize and eventually replace the fractured system.
The third autopsy involves the German grocery chain Lidl. In 2011, Lidl partnered with SAP to modernize its inventory management infrastructure. This project dragged on for 7 years. It drained $580 million before it was entirely abandoned. The fundamental error was architectural and philosophical. Lidl attempted to alter its unique, highly specific record-keeping methods and core business models to fit the rigid limitations of standard SAP software. When an enterprise forces a highly specialized operational model to conform to rigid software constraints rather than adapting the system or conducting proper process reengineering, the outcome is systemic rejection. Lidl ultimately reverted to its legacy in-house system. They absorbed a massive financial and temporal loss simply because they tried to bend their business to the software rather than aligning the software with the business.
The crucial principle derived from these failures is process before platform. Automating broken workflows simply scales inefficiencies. Business process reengineering, commonly referred to as BPR, must precede any software deployment. Deploying an ERP system without first deconstructing and redesigning legacy workflows guarantees a predictable outcome. You will embed outdated, inefficient processes into a highly expensive, rigid digital architecture. Software cannot fix broken operations. It only accelerates them. Organizations must rigorously map how work currently flows through the business. They must identify where delays occur and ruthlessly eliminate redundant activities long before writing a single line of code or configuring a new software module.
There is a strong, verified academic consensus on BPR as a strategic enabler.
As the literature details, business process reengineering requires three distinct pillars: process orientation, a strict customer focus, and the intelligent leveraging of technology. A process-first approach minimizes operational disruptions during deployment. By mapping existing workflows and identifying pain points prior to implementation, organizations ensure that the new system actively supports optimized workflows. This stands in stark contrast to systems that merely reinforce outdated legacy processes. This fundamental alignment is what actually enhances user adoption. It matches system capabilities directly with actual business requirements, ultimately protecting the enterprise from the billion-dollar failures we just analyzed.
This brings us to the architectural tension between standardization and customization. Maintaining core system integrity requires a deliberate, hybrid approach. Excessive customization actively increases system complexity. It prolongs implementation cycles and severely inflates long-term maintenance costs. Conversely, extreme standardization carries its own fatal risk. It can destroy an organization's competitive differentiation by forcing them into generic, industry-standard workflows that erase their unique market advantages. The executive mandate is clear. You must leverage standard, out-of-the-box ERP functionalities for core baseline processes, such as finance and basic accounting. You permit minimal, highly controlled customization only in areas where it directly supports and protects your unique competitive advantages.
Section 3. The Human Blueprint. Managing change fatigue is a critical executive function. Change in the modern enterprise is no longer episodic. It is constant. Protecting your employees' identity capital in the face of this relentless fatigue is a mandatory operational requirement, not a secondary human resources afterthought.
We must draw a hard, definitive line between a technical installation and an organizational implementation. A technical installation merely turns the software on. It ensures the servers run, the network connects, and the code compiles without fatal errors. True organizational implementation, however, is an entirely different discipline. It demands sustained behavioral change and measurable adoption by the end user. Most project frameworks conflate these two concepts. This leads IT teams to declare victory and project success at go live, while the actual business users quietly revert to manual spreadsheets and legacy workarounds just to survive the workday. Success is never measured by the software running in a data center. It is measured exclusively by the workforce utilizing that software to generate targeted, measurable business value.
To achieve true implementation, we rely on established change management frameworks. Look closely at how these three leading models compare and where they intersect. Kotter's 8-step model excels at early-stage leadership mobilization. It is designed to create widespread organizational urgency before a project begins. The Prashi 80KAR model is highly effective for individual readiness diagnostics. It focuses on the personal transition phases of awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. However, for sustained organizational adoption at an enterprise scale, the Accelerating Implementation Methodology, or AIM, provides the necessary operational architecture. AIM is uncompromising. It demands explicit sponsor accountability across all management layers. Furthermore, it treats user resistance not as a mere psychological hurdle, but as a systemic diagnostic signal indicating a flaw in the deployment strategy.
Consider this specific reality. Implementing an ERP system is a profound disruption to the corporate nervous system. It is not an upgrade. It fundamentally changes how people think, how they process information, and how they execute their daily operational duties. Failure to actively and methodically manage the people side of this change guarantees project failure. When executives ignore organizational change management, employee resistance transitions from a temporary psychological state into a permanent systemic operational failure. Poor adoption will stall the entire enterprise. It does not matter how elegantly the underlying database is constructed or how much the software licenses cost if the workforce refuses to engage with the platform.
Section 4. The Chronological Action Plan and Guardrails. We turn now to securing stability. To ensure organizational survival and a defensible return on investment, leaders must establish a strict chronological action plan secured by inflexible, non-negotiable guardrails.
Here are your Phase A stability requirements. This is a commanding directive for any deployment team. You must enforce a minimum viable implementation. Stick strictly to basic blocking and tackling. Focus your initial efforts exclusively on core transactional processes like procure-to-pay and order-to-cash. You must aggressively combat scope creep at the executive level. All requested customizations must be ruthlessly deferred to subsequent phases. The objective is to get the system live with only what is absolutely required to run the core operations of the business. Everything else is a distraction that introduces unnecessary risk.
Data integrity cannot be treated as a secondary project phase. Gartner research indicates that organizations believe poor data quality costs them an average of $11.8 million annually. Clean data migration, precise financial ledgers, and validated physical inventory counts are absolute prerequisites to deployment. They are not post-launch tasks to be sorted out by middle management after go-live. Transitioning from legacy systems requires transferring massive volumes of historical and transactional data. This data must be cleansed, standardized, and strictly validated before it enters the new environment. Poor data quality in a new ERP leads directly to reporting inaccuracies, immediate system paralysis, and the permanent erosion of user trust in the new platform.
Returning to the catastrophic lessons of Hershey, a rigorous testing methodology is required to prevent operational failure. Testing is not a technical formality. It is a multi-phase simulation of your future operational state. It begins with a conference room pilot, designed to validate core business scenarios in a controlled setting. It then progresses to systems integration testing, which evaluates complex cross-departmental workflows, technical integrations with third-party software, and unpredictable edge cases. Finally, it culminates in user acceptance testing. UAT must never be a superficial checkbox to satisfy project managers. It must serve as a full, exhaustive dress rehearsal. It has to mirror actual business operations under highly realistic conditions and peak volume stress.
When determining your deployment strategy, you face a critical architectural choice. You must decide between a big bang implementation and a phased approach. A big bang approach forces an immediate, high-risk cutover, where the entire suite of applications goes live simultaneously across all global locations. This strategy demands flawless testing and absolutely perfect data migration. Conversely, a measured, modular, phased rollout introduces core functionalities incrementally over time. This methodology allows for iterative feedback, greater operational stability, and far smoother change management. For large, complex enterprises, the phased approach is objectively superior because it systematically reduces the blast radius of any potential system failures.
We conclude this executive briefing with a sharp inquiry for your board of directors. Look closely at your current digital transformation agenda. Are you truly redesigning broken workflows and investing in the human blueprint required for sustained adoption? Or are you merely installing expensive software to appease shareholders, effectively financing vendor marketing while simultaneously scaling your own technical debt? True operational excellence cannot be purchased in a software license. It requires rigorous process discipline, uncompromising leadership accountability, and the courage to manage systemic change. Thank you for joining this cold assessment of enterprise systems.